The sea roared against the fjord, waves crashing like the drums of war. The sky, heavy with storm clouds, cast a deep shadow over the Viking village of Skalgard. It was a land of warriors, bound by blood and battle. Among them stood two brothers, destined for greatness but divided by love. Eirik and Leif, sons of Jarl Stenver the Wolf, were as different as night and day. Eirik, the elder, was a warrior of unyielding firebolt, impetuous and fearless in battle. Leif, the younger, was the calm one, thoughtful, strategic, a man whose strength lay in his mind as much as his sword. Yet for all their differences, they were bound by love for one woman, Astrid, the healer's daughter. She was the village's guiding light. With hair like spun gold and eyes as blue as the winter sky, she spoke softly but carried strength in her heart, tending wounds and whispering prayers to the old gods. Both brothers had loved her since they were boys, and now, as men, their rivalry simmered like embers waiting to spark into flame. Astrid, however, had never chosen between them. One evening, as the village feasted in the great hall, a horn blared from the watchtower. A scout stumbled inside, his face blooded, his breath ragged. "Hrothgar the Cruel marches towards Skalgard," he gasped. With 100 warriors at his back. The hall fell silent. Hrothgar was a brutal warlord, a man who razed villages and took what he pleased. He had long coveted Skalgard's rich lands, and now, it seemed, he had come to claim them. Jarl Stenver stood, his eyes flashing. "We will meet them in battle." The warriors roared their agreement, slamming their fists on the tables. Eirik and Leif stood side by side, their differences forgotten for now. Later that night, as the village prepared for war, Astrid stood by the shore, watching the moonlight dance on the water. Leif approached her first. "Astrid," he said, his voice low, "if something happens to me, promise me you'll find happiness." She smiled subtly. "Do not speak of death, Leif." Then Eirik arrived, his presence like a storm rolling in. He took her hands, his grip strong. "I will return," he vowed. "And when I do, you will be mine." Astrid looked between them, her heart heavy. She could not bear to lose either of them. At dawn, the warriors of Skalgard met Hrothgar's forces in battle. The clash of steel filled the air, blood soaked the earth, and war cries echoed across the fjord. Eirik fought like a man possessed, his axe carving through enemies. But Leif, ever the strategist, saw something was wrong. Hrothgar's forces were too well coordinated. It was as if they knew Skalgard's every move. Then, Leif saw the unthinkable Eirik speaking with Hrothgar in the midst of battle. A dark realization settled over him. Eirik had made a deal. Hrothgar's men would spare him in exchange for something. Greater Skalgard's lands and Astrid. Leif's blood ran cold. His own brother had betrayed them. In the chaos, Hrothgar's men breached the village. Screams filled the air as houses burned. Astrid was among those taken. She fought, but strong hands bound her wrists, dragging her to Hrothgar's longship. Leif, wounded but determined, watched in horror as the ship sailed away. Eirik standing on its deck beside Hrothgar. Betrayal. For days, Leif gathered what warriors remained and pursued Hrothgar's fleet across the stormy seas. His heart burned with vengeance, but also with sorrow. Eirik, his brother, his blood had done this. But why? Was it greed? A hunger for power? Or had Eirik truly believed Astrid would choose him if he ruled in Hrothgar's stead? Whatever the reason, Leif swore to make him answer for it. As they neared Hrothgar's stronghold, a storm rose, tossing their ships like leaves in the wind. That night, Leif dreamed. Asiris appeared to him, her voice like the whisper of the gods. "Only one brother will return with Astrid," she warned. Leif awoke with a start, his breath ragged. The Asiris's words echoing in his mind. Only one brother will return with Astrid. The weight of fate pressed upon him like a great stone. Did it mean his death or Eirik's? He refused to believe it. He stepped onto the deck of his longship, the salty wind stinging his face. His warriors, hardened men of the north, stood ready. They had followed him without question. But in their eyes, he saw the same doubt he felt. "The gods test us," he told them. "But we are Vikings. We do not break before the storm, we become it. A roar of approval rose from the men. Leif turned toward the horizon where Hrothgar's stronghold awaited. He would face his brother. He would save Astrid. And he would prove that fate could be defied. Astrid sat in the dark confines of Hrothgar's hall, her wrists still bound. The old warlord sat upon his high seat, feasting, his laughter like the growl of a wolf. Eirik stood beside him, silent, his expression unreadable. "Do you truly believe this old beast will give you power?" She spat at Eirik when they were alone. He flinched but did not meet her gaze. "I did this for us," he said. Astrid's heart twisted with fury. "You did this for yourself. You betrayed your own brother. Do you think I could ever love a man who would trade loyalty for ambition?" Eirik clenched his fists. "I love you, Astrid. I always have. I watched you choose Leif, but I swore I would not lose you." "You already have," she whispered. For the first time, she saw doubt in his eyes. But then Hrothgar called for him, and Eirik turned away. Before dawn, Leif's ships reached the shores near Hrothgar's stronghold. He and his warriors landed under the cover of mist, their axes gleaming in the faint light. "We strike fast and hard," Leif commanded. "No mercy for those who stand in our way." The battle horn sounded. Leif and his men stormed the gates, clashing with Hrothgar's warriors in a brutal melee. Steel rang against steel, shields splintered, and blood soaked the earth. Through the chaos, Leif saw Eirik standing on the steps of the great hall. Their eyes met across the battlefield. The moment had come. Eirik stepped forward, sword drawn. "You should have stayed away, Leif." Leif raised his axe, and leave Astrid in the hands of a coward. Eirik's face twisted with rage. "You think I am the coward? I did what was necessary. You were always the favored one, the leader, the hero. I was only ever your shadow, but no longer." The world faded around them, only the fight remained, brother against brother. Leif fought with fury, his love for Astrid and the sting of betrayal driving him forward. But Eirik was just as fierce, fueled by desperation and jealousy. Strike, parry, clash. Then, a moment of hesitation. Leif saw an opening, but his heart wavered. Could he truly kill his own brother? Eirik did not hesitate. He lunged. Leif barely dodged in time, but the blade sliced across his ribs. Pain flared, but he did not falter. He slammed his shield into Eirik's chest, sending him sprawling. "Yield, brother," Leif roared. But Eirik refused. He rose again, blood dripping from his brow. And then Hrothgar appeared. The old warlord laughed. "This is how brothers end. I have seen it before." Leif and Eirik turned to him, panting. "You think you are strong," Hrothgar sneered. "But you are only fools. The gods have already decided." Then, with a wicked grin, he drew his great sword and struck at Eirik. Eirik gasped as the blade pierced his side. Leif's world slowed. Without thinking, he lunged, his axe biting deep into Hrothgar's neck. The old warlord's laughter died in a gurgle of blood. Eirik collapsed. Leif caught him before he hit the ground. "Eirik, hold on." Eirik coughed, blood staining his lips. He looked up at his brother, his eyes filled with regret. I thought I had to be more, that I had to take what was yours." Leif's grip tightened. "You are my brother. That is all that ever mattered." Eirik smiled weakly. "Then, I am not alone." Leif's throat tightened. "Never." Astrid rushed to them, tears in her eyes. She pressed a hand to Eirik's wound, but it was too deep. Eirik looked at her. "I'm sorry, Astrid. I was a fool." She took his hand. "You were lost, but now, you are found." Eirik let out a breath and closed his eyes. His chest rose once then stilled. Leif bowed his head. The prophecy had been fulfilled. Only one brother would return. The battle was won. Hrothgar's men surrendered. Astrid was free, but the victory felt hollow. As they sailed home, Leif carried his brother's body with honor. He had lost family, but he had also gained clarity. He was not just a warrior seeking vengeance. He was a leader, a man who had fought for love, for loyalty, for something greater than himself. Astrid stood beside him, silent but strong. "He found peace," she said. Leif nodded. "And we will honor him." As they reached their village, the people gathered to mourn and to celebrate. A great pyre was lit for Eirik, his spirit sent to the halls of Valhalla. And as the flames rose, Leif took Astrid's hand. The past was written in blood and sorrow, but the future was theirs to forge, together.